No one talked back to the Carter boys. In the city's wealthiest neighborhood, everyone knew their name, not because of respect, but fear. They were the four sons of Richard Carter, a powerful white American billionaire CEO whose companies controlled banks, real estate, and technology across the country. And his sons? They were untouchable. Each one had been expelled from schools, kicked out of elite programs, and banned from private clubs. Tutors quit within days. Bodyguards refused to work nights. Staff never lasted more than a week. Not because the boys were violent, but because they were arrogant, cruel, and completely unafraid of consequences, because no one dared discipline them. Inside the massive Carter estate, chaos had become normal. Broken furniture, shattered phones, staff reduced to silence. Richard Carter watched it all from a distance. He provided everything money could buy, but avoided confrontation. After his wife passed away years earlier, he buried himself in work and let his sons grow wild. "They'll grow out of it," he always said. They never did. Everything changed the night Helen Brooks walked through the gates. Helen was a Black American woman in her early 30s, tall, calm, with steady eyes that had seen struggle. She wore a simple maid's uniform and carried herself without fear or apology. She wasn't impressed by the mansion, she wasn't intimidated by the guards, and she definitely wasn't afraid of four spoiled young men who had never been told no. Helen took the job for one reason only: survival. Her younger brother was in college, tuition was due, jobs were scarce, and the Carter estate paid well. If you survived. Other maids warned her quietly. "They'll break you," one whispered. They broke everyone. Helen nodded and walked in anyway. The first test came within hours. One of the sons deliberately spilled wine across the marble floor and stared at her, smiling. "Clean it, now." Helen looked at the mess, then looked at him. "Not until you apologized to the staff you disrespected," she said calmly. The room froze. No maid had ever spoken like that. The son laughed. The others laughed with him. "You think you can talk to us like that?" Helen didn't raise her voice. She didn't back away. "You're not children, and I'm not your enemy, but I will not accept disrespect." They waited for her to panic. She didn't. Word spread quickly. The next day, all four sons tested her. They made noise at night. They ignored schedules. They mocked her background. They tried to scare her off. Helen did none of what previous staff had done. She didn't beg. She didn't argue. She didn't complain to the CEO. Instead, she did something no one expected. She set rules. Breakfast served on time or no second servings. Rooms left trashed, cleaned by the person who made the mess. Disrespect to staff, privileges quietly removed. No yelling, no threats, just consistency. When one son missed an important meeting because Helen refused to wake him after he broke curfew, Richard Carter finally noticed. He called her into his office. "Do you know who my sons are?" the CEO asked coldly. Helen met his eyes. "Yes, sir." "And you still think you can control them?" Helen paused. "I'm not controlling them. I'm teaching them how the real world works." Richard expected fear. What he saw instead was truth. For the first time, someone wasn't asking him for favors or blaming his sons. She was holding them accountable. The boys fought back harder. They accused her of being just a maid. They tried to get her fired. They mocked her discipline. But something strange happened. They started waking up on time. They stopped breaking things. They argued less, not because they feared her, but because she didn't fear them. One night, after a heated argument, the youngest son snapped. "You don't belong here. You think you're better than us?" Helen didn't respond immediately. Then she said quietly, "I belong wherever I choose to stand with dignity." The room went silent. Weeks passed. Richard Carter watched from afar as his sons slowly changed. They spoke with respect, sometimes unwillingly, but consistently. They learned boundaries. They learned consequences. Most importantly, they learned responsibility. One evening, the CEO overheard something that stunned him. One son said to another, "Don't do that." Helen wouldn't allow it. Richard realized then what had happened. The woman he hired as help had done what he never could. She showed his sons structure without cruelty, strength without violence, discipline without fear. The final test came unexpectedly. During a public event at the estate, one son embarrassed a staff member in front of guests. Before anyone could react, Helen stepped forward. "Apologize," she said firmly. The son hesitated. The CEO watched closely. The guests waited. Slowly, the young man apologized, not because Helen ordered him to, but because he respected her. Later that night, Richard Carter asked Helen to sit down with him. "I spent millions trying to fix them," he said quietly, "and you did it without raising your voice." Helen replied, "They didn't need money, they needed limits." Richard stood up. "For years, people feared my name, but tonight, my sons earned respect." He offered her a permanent position with authority. Helen accepted, not for power, but purpose. From that day on, the Carter estate changed, not because a billionaire demanded it, but because a fearless black maid showed that dignity, consistency, and courage can discipline what money never could. And for the first time in their lives, the CEO's sons finally grew up.